Injuries suck. Let's get that out of the way. There's no other way of saying that. And yet as athletes, we're faced with the challenge of pushing past our comfort zone, because that's where growth lives, while staying within the realms of relative safety. This dance between these two areas becomes harder when the way that we're training is intricately linked to moving in ways that we never have before. So then we get injured, and we're left wondering what we should do about it. Today we're going to dig into a blueprint that will help us better recover from injuries, particularly with a calisthenics focus, from the point immediately after you get injured to getting back to normal, as well as the main problems that you may face along that road to recovery. Slight left turn though before we get started, I wanted to caution us away from becoming too reliant on training apparatus. If we have chronic golfer's elbow, for example, an elbow sleeve is not going to make that pain go away over the long term. These pieces of equipment are designed as assistance tools, more for aiding progress rather than curing injuries. Trying to bulldoze through a wrist strain because we have wrist wraps is simply not going to end well. It's also worth noting that the best way to recover from an injury is to just not get injured in the first place. And the reason I say this isn't to be kept in hindsight by saying something so obviously stupid. In fact, those of you watching right now with injuries, just go back in time and just don't get injured. There, I fixed you. For real though, while we are injured, our likelihood of getting injured further actually increases if we aren't careful, as we naturally move slightly more differently to compensate for things that we can't do right now. Just something to think about when deciding whether it's worth doing this warm-up or that prehab exercise. Okay, so you're in the gym, you're killing it, and you just feel something go. Frustrating as it is, it's almost always better to stop what you're doing and take a moment to assess. Even experienced physios will struggle to diagnose an issue on the fly, and if you push through something that you don't realize is more severe than it actually is because you're such a die-hard Chad,
you're gonna have a bad time.
Assuming we're not in pain or doing movements that aggravate the issue further, by all means carry on with the rest of the session. Our next best action once we're home is to get ourselves looked into by a professional. I cannot stress the importance of seeing an experienced physio enough. Not only because looking up your symptoms on Google will have you thinking that you only have 10 days left to live, but in this moment, a poor self-diagnosis could lead to further issues. All injuries aren't built the same. A minor muscle tear may do well from some light, easy movement, but moving a damaged tendon too much and you could end up with tendinitis. And to be clear here, what I'm not saying is that every single injury should require us to rush off to the hospital. If we manage to sleep it off and we're no longer feeling pain, by all means carry on with your day. But where we're not too sure and we're experiencing pain, seeing a specialist can add significant value. Ultrasounds, MRI scans, and X-rays are all tools that you cannot get from a quick Google search and can expose what's really going on under the hood. Okay, so you've understood that a specialist can add value, but their diagnosis might not even be immediate. What can we do in the meantime to keep ourselves active? And I want to talk about adjusting our training goals for a second. It's important to understand that just because we can't train the way we always used to train because we're injured, doesn't mean we should just drop the habit of training altogether. A sprained wrist stopping us from doing pike push-ups won't stop us from working on our shoulder mobility, and having a different focus may allow us to improve on areas that we may have historically neglected. And in the example we just mentioned, more mobile shoulders will actually improve our pike push-ups in the long run once we're back and recovered. And this is actually a good thing because chances are these areas of historical neglection, I'm looking at you cardio, will also be ripe for gains right in the immediate term. And because we're injured in one area, we can give it our best energy. Once we've taken our time to specifically understand what is causing us issues, there are things that we can do to speed up our recovery process. My first port of call for introducing activity to an injured area is isometrics. Isometrics, being static contractions of a muscle, are great for many reasons. Because we are static, we create less of the micro tears that come with concentric and eccentric movement, meaning that we de-risk further damage to the injured area. We can stay in a range of motion that doesn't cause us pain. Discomfort is fine. We'll feel discomfort as we train, but we also want to stay away from real pain. We don't want to be making anything worse. And isometrics allow us to build strength in the affected area, which is important, especially if that area has atrophied over the time that we've been injured. This is important for getting us back to a place where we can train the way we used to. And when I say isometrics, I want to be clear here in saying that I'm talking about overcoming isometrics. The sort of isometrics where we are contracting against an immovable object, as opposed to yielding isometrics where a force is acting on us and we have to resist it to stay still. Overcoming isometrics will just give us far more control over the amount of force we want to exert in that moment. A step up from isometrics is light loading. 2 to 3 in terms of rate of perceived exertion, where we now take the injured area through a shorter range of motion, again staying away from pain. With this, we not only get more blood to the affected area, but by working it, we start to eliminate the fear around making the problem worse. With this step, it's very important that we know ourselves as well. If you're like me and your default is to go hard or go home, make sure you set yourself strict guidelines on making sure that you're not pushing yourself too hard. But if you're perhaps a little bit more cautious and you like to be a little bit more tentative with reintroducing movements, make sure you're doing movements that you're extremely comfortable with first in order to get that confidence up. Recovery is as much mental as it is physical. Now, something that often gets overlooked when you think about injuries is what we're doing when we're not in the gym. And the best things we can be doing for ourselves is getting good sleep and reducing our stress levels. Easier said than done, I know, but there is no point doing every prehab exercise you find on YouTube when you have a lifestyle that's completely stressing you out. If you are injured, use this time to go for a walk, go see your friends, go and do something that helps you wind down. Food is another thing that is often overlooked when it comes to recovery, which is actually crazy because if there is a time that we want to be eating as well as we can, it is when we are looking to speed up our recovery process. We are what we put in your bodies. Your car literally wouldn't run if you put the wrong fuel in it. Highly nutritious foods will do more for us than empty calories, and I'd argue that even for an uninjured person, this is the most important aspect of health. Crowd, use this framework to speed up your recovery, get back to your calisthenics training and get back to your A game. But if you want to understand what we can do to prevent injuries in the first place, then take a look at this video here going through the common calisthenics injuries that we get in our elbows, wrists and shoulders.